laughing aloud now, magic in the air. Wands roll around us, cast away our care. Friends in the hallways, adventures we find. Spells and enchantments, trouble on our mind. That's so wizardful.
Is Wizards of the Coast done with its fans? I don't know, because it's time for the #1 television show on the YouTube. That's So Wizards. That was So Wizards is filmed live in front of a studio audience consisting of Steve the Cat. What's up, my nerds? It's Wednesday, and it's about 8 o'clock in the morning. It's the 13th day of November. It is cold and windy. Happy holidays to you and yours. Let's end the year relatively controversy-free. Oh, wait, it's Wednesday because Wizards. All right, so what's going on with Wizards of the Coast this week? Well, it's not really a story about anything Wizards of the Coast has done specifically this week. It's just a lot of people are making their end of the year videos about how Dungeons and Dragons is dead, the OSR is dead, tabletop role-playing games are dead, and of course also Hasbro hates its fans, Hasbro hates D&D. We've got a video from our good friends over at the Pickled Dragon and Jacoya, and Jacoya has answered me personally, which is a great honor to hear from our good friend Jacoya and the Pickled Dragon. They made a video about how Wizards of the Coast is leaving the fan base behind, how Hasbro is leaving the Dungeons and Dragons, grognard, people who've been playing for 10,000 years behind in favor of this elusive new fan base. And our good friends over at Above the Table have also made a video about is Wizards of the Coast leaving the Dungeons and Dragons tabletop role-playing game fan base behind in favor of this elusive new digital interactive audience. Is Hasbro no longer supporting Dungeons and Dragons, the game? Is Hasbro invested in creating this new Dungeons and Dragons brand? Are they, in fact, leaving the tabletop role-playing game community behind? Yes. Yes, they are. Are you just now aware of this? I mean, I talk shit about Wizards of the Coast a lot. Probably more than I should, right? But I can say, in all sincerity, in regards to this one specific topic, they have never once beat around the bush. They have been painfully obvious about their plans for Dungeons and Dragons for over 10 years now. They literally told you to your face on more than one occasion that this is what they're doing. So at this point in time, going into 2025, going into 2030, going into that elusive 2027 D&D 6X, you're still surprised? I mean, let's not forget that at the 2020 PulseCon, then Wizards of the Coast CEO directly told us what the plans for the next 10 years for all their product lines, including Dungeons and Dragons War. Let's not forget that last year and this year, Wizards of the Coast CEO Chris Cott has blatantly told us repeatedly that they do not feel that Dungeons and Dragons or any of their brands makes them money anymore directly. The only way Hasbro can continue to make money off of Dungeons and Dragons, Power Rangers, G.I. Joe, Nerf, Furby, whatever, but especially Dungeons and Dragons, is if they license out the AP, if they find new ways to market the brand. Dungeons and Dragons is going to be a brand. It is no longer a tabletop role-playing game. Our target audience is not just 5 old white people in the middle of the West Coast who are playing in a basement. No, our target audience is a world. And we want to present D&D, the brand, to that world because D&D, the game, isn't making us money. In fact, according to the Q3 numbers, Dungeons and Dragons lost them money again. Wizards of the Coast is making money off of the digital stuff. Hasbro's been very clear since 2020, the digital stuff is the goal. Hasbro has been very clear since 4th edition, the digital stuff is the goal. Taking Dungeons and Dragons away from the tabletop and turning it into a lifestyle brand has been the goal for almost 20 years. Is Dungeons and Dragons leaving T&T tabletop role-playing games behind? Absolutely. Absolutely. 100% absolutely. You don't have to like it, but they've never lied about it. And it's business. On paper, there's nothing wrong with what Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro is doing with the product line. In order for the product line to remain relevant in today's audience, it has to adapt and change. It is not the game I played in the 70s and 80s and 90s or even 2000s. And that's okay. That is okay, OSR, if Dungeons and Dragons evolves. It has to evolve or it dies. And if they're writing longtime fans off like Dracoya and the Pickle Dragon suggest, that's okay, because longtime fans like myself have the ability to continue to play D&D in any form I want, any form you want. If Rye versus World or Vorpalbite wants to play D&D White Box, there are several hundred games that allow you to emulate White Box. If Dracoya and the Pickle Dragon want to play Dungeons and Dragons, Holmes version, BX, expanded, whatever, that exists. That's out there. There are hundreds of games that copy that. If you want to play AD&D 2.0, if you want to play the last thing Gygax worked on before he passed away, that's out there. Troll Lord Games has all the stuff Gygax was working on when he passed away. All the stuff that was going to be the next version of D&D had the TSR thing not happen with Lorraine Williams. That's out there. You want to play 3rd edition? That's out there. You want to play 3.5? That's out there. You want to play 4th? That's out there. If you like 5th and want to continue to play 5th the way it was written in 2014, Tales from the Valiant and the ORC is out there. There is nothing stopping you from continuing to play Dungeons and Dragons the way we love playing Dungeons and Dragons. Wizards of the Coast is fine with that. We're not their target audience anymore, and we haven't been for a long time. That's okay. That is good business. I'd rather get 100 18-year-olds buying D&D stuff than one old guy on YouTube named the OGGM buying my product every now and then. I'm going to make more money off of that crap than I am off that one guy. That's just good business. Gearing the target audience, gearing the product line for a new target audience, accepting the fact that Dungeons and Dragons as a niche role-playing game is always going to be a niche role-playing game. And the only way to get any product to make money continuously is to find new markets for that product. And that's okay, guys. You don't have to like it, but that's okay. You just have to accept that's so Wizards. That's what Wizards is going to do. And I can still play whatever version I want to play. Wizards of the Coast can't come and tell me I can't play Shadowdark. Wizards of the Coast can't come and tell you you can't play Dungeon Crawl Classic. Wizards of the Coast can't come and tell you you can't play 3.5 or Advanced Dungeons and Dragons or whatever. It doesn't matter. Yes, but do you spend it on Wizards of the Coast product or do you spend it on other stuff? Do you spend it on dice, figures, third-party stuff? I don't spend any money on Wizard stuff, but I'll still play 5e. Right? I'll still run 5e, but all my money goes to third-party stuff. And all the money I take in from you guys when you buy my merch, you are buying my merch, right, Vorpalbite? That's all mine. If the Pinkertons come a knocking, I'll have a sandwich ready for them. They want the D&D stuff, here, take it. It's not like I can't find it for free online. Now, the fact that Wizards of the Coast, Hasbro, is doing these things, we have to all accept is okay. It is not a surprise. They have literally told us this was the plan. If there is anybody out there other than J. Scott Garrity who fails to agree that this is the plan, I'm sorry. You can continue to live in your little Pollyanna shoebox in a corner, constantly denying the plans that Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro has been blatantly honestly about. I can't stop that, okay? I can continue rattling this bell till I die. Wizards of the Coast can continue to go, yeah, this is what we're doing. I don't know why you have a problem with it. We've been telling you we're going to do this for the last 20 years. But you can feel whatever you're going to feel, but it's not on Wizards of the Coast. They've been honest. I think we then, therefore, moving forward, can also all agree that with, unlike any other company on the planet who's doing the exact same thing, the choices Wizards of the Coast has made to take their product line into the future are quite honestly, unbelievably self-destructive and stupid and make no, excuse my language, fucking sense. You're taking basic good business principles 101 and somehow ignoring them. You're doing every stupid possible mistake with your product line, just like you did with fourth and third, especially with fourth. If I were ever to teach economics and business, I would run a class called How Not to Run a Business. And then I would just spend the whole semester talking about Wizards of the Coast as examples of how not to run a business and compare them to businesses that have been successful and have worked the formula and the algorithm over the past 20 years. Wizards of the Coast, consistently stupid, consistently pissing off its demographic, consistently unaware who its target audience is. Honda, Burger King, totally aware of who their target audience is, totally aware of how to move the product line while still understanding that there are people who appreciate the older product line. Wizards of the Coast has forgotten that there are people who still like the product line, even if they're old fucks like me. We want to see you talk about D&D. We want to see you make the old stuff available to us again without making us feel like shit. But what Wizards of the Coast has done, of course, is to choose to not only completely ignore the history, attempt to rewrite the history, but constantly insult this history if somehow they made D&D better in 2014 and anything that before 2014 was awful. And anybody who played Dungeons & Dragons in 2014, like me, is an awful human being who exemplifies the worst aspects of humanity. Wizards would have you believe that because I played D&D in the 80s, I eat babies. And, you know, I'm either a communist or a Nazi, depending upon what point of view. And people will say, well, go woke, go broke, except the woke D&D players are not the people who are buying it. The target audience that Wizards is trying to embrace doesn't exist. Even the Critical Role fans are evolving and changing. The Stranger Things fan base are evolving and changing. All right, so moving on from the continued stupidity of Wizards of the Coast, it's time to talk about the Dungeon Master's Guide, because in case you're also living under a rock, there's a brand new D&D Dungeon Master's Guides that come out. It is selling more than any other Dungeon Master's Guide that Wizards of the Coast has ever produced, despite the fact that there are multiple pre-order issues, despite the fact that multiple people have paid for it but not received it, and yet somehow it's a #1 seller. I know that makes no sense, but wibbly wobbly, timey wimey, if you release 1,000 products at a game convention almost a month before it actually goes on the market, but then you count those 1,000 products as sales, and then you also count the pre-orders as sales, even though the pre-orders were made before it actually went to market, then yes, you have sold more copies faster than any previous edition of the Dungeon Master's Guide, because you're counting the 900 copies that went on sale in London at London Comic Book Con 4 weeks before it ever actually went on the shelves here at any of the big box. And you're also counting the pre-orders, even though people aren't receiving the pre-orders yet, still counts as sales. So they can say, look how well it's done, guys. We sold 900 before the game existed. We control time and space. So the reviews are out, and the reviews generally agree that the 2024 Dungeon Master's Guide is better than the 2014 Dungeon Master's Guide. It's more of a Dungeon Master's Guide and less of just, I don't know what this is. Now, that said, people are also saying that it doesn't really tell you how to be a dungeon master. And the Bastion rules are broken and dumb. And apparently they're so broken that there's already errata out, and people have already found ways to use the Bastion rules to generate infinite wealth and infinite magic items. Oh, wow, a broken combination. Who knew? So what can we tell from the final reviews? That it's better than the 2024 things, that it addresses the challenges better, that it presents the material in a better, more easy flow way. The art is not as offensive as the player's handbook art. It has all the things you'd want to have in a beginner's guide. What it lacks, of course, is the actual how to play, how to be a DM, how to, deal with situations like this. Sure, it'll give us 100 pages on safety tables. Interesting. The Dungeons and Dragons has overstayed its welcome and is actually now bad for the hobby. I mean, I think Critical Role is both the best and worst thing that's happened to the hobby. Stranger Things, a wonderful thing to happen to the hobby and a horrible thing to happen to the hobby. It's saying D&D is overstayed its welcome is like saying any pop culture icon has overstayed its welcome. Has Spider-Man overstayed his welcome? Has Star Wars overstayed its welcome? Has Mickey Mouse overstayed its welcome? D&D is no longer a thing. It's become part of pop culture. There's people all over the world who know the name without actually having any idea what it is. So it has evolved past a bunch of idiots sitting at their table, rolling dice and talking about, what their characters do, which is fine. It's wonderful. It's what we've always wanted. We want people to think we're cool. We're never going to be as cool as we were during the pandemic, but that's okay, because hopefully something like that will never happen again, right? So has Dungeons and Dragons overstayed its welcome? In some ways, yeah. In some ways, yeah. I mean, in role-playing games, people playing Let's Make Believe with rules is always going to be a thing. It's never going to go out of style. There's always going to be somebody who wants to play that. It's the oldest form of entertainment, and it will continue to be a form. Game playing, dramatic play, make believe with rules. That's been around since before the Greek plays. It is the oldest form of play. The culture that Wizards of the Coast is trying to create definitely is a problem. The belief system that, this racist, sexist, homophobic, orcs are racist, drow are racist, problematic, that doesn't exist and never has existed, but Wizards of the Coast and Hasbro would have you believe it existed, and enough people on the left would also have you believe it existed, that it becomes a thing when it shouldn't be. And as somebody who's on the left, as somebody who is a Democrat, as somebody who is LGBTQT, I agree. It's not and never has been racist. It's not and never has been sexist. It's not and never has been homophobic, ageist, disabilityist. Dungeons and Dragons has been the one thing on earth that is a hobby that is like, hey, I don't care who you are. I just want to play. I'm pretty sure that most of the people in the game I am running voted for Trump and have completely different views on things like LGBTQ rights and abortion than I do. As long as they don't bring it up during the game, I don't care. Just like in the games I'm playing in, I don't think anybody cares about my political or anything else because it doesn't affect the game. You're always welcome at the table, no matter who and what you are. In fact, we went out of our way to invite people to the table. I can remember countless times. If somebody even walked past the table and showed even the slightest interest, we would ask them if they wanted to learn how to play. Kids, adults, didn't matter your gender, the color of your skin, what you look like, how you acted. Rich, poor, I've played with homeless people, I've played with movie stars, I've played with billionaires. It's all the same. D&D doesn't care. So that white conqueror mentality is one of the things that Wizards of the Coast is doing. That's stupid. Thankfully, there doesn't seem to be as much of it in the Dungeon Master's Guide as there was in the previous Dungeon Master's Guide. It seems to appear to be just some more of a, here's a general overall thing of how to play D&D, and here's the magic items because those are cool, and here's the races, the stuff, and the gods and the worlds and all the things that are cool, and there's Venger for some reason, and it's okay. It's not great. It's not awful. It's definitely got some huge holes in it, but all in all, compared to the 2014 Dungeon Master's Guide, generally it seems to be usable. It's fine. There's way better products out there if you want things that actually guide you to being a dungeon master. But if you've never, ever played before and have no idea or interest in doing the legwork to find those other products, to look at the tables, to look at the articles, to look at the products that are out there that are also much cheaper than the DM's Guide, baby first step, Dungeon Master's Guide, this one's fine. As long as you understand that there's better out there that are worth your money. But if you've never played before, 2024 D&D DM's Guide seems to get a grade of a C+. It's passable. Congratulations, Wizards of the Coast. It's the first product in a long time that you've made that is fine. It's fine. It does its job. Not very well, but it's not awful either. It's McDonald's. It's a Big Mac. It does its job, but it's not great. There are better burgers. There are better DM's guides. But you know what you're not going to get from those better DM guides? You know what you're not going to get from the third party? You know what you're not going to get from the OSR? Is this. The Dungeons and Dragons immersive thing. And that's what started the whole argument that we began with. That Wizards of the Coast, Hasbro, Dungeons and Dragons is doing these live action, actual play things, and they're doing this immersive thing. They've got a brand new thing running on Amazon for the Secret Lairs animated series, because one of the Secret Lairs animations is a Dungeons and Dragons theme. So think of Love, Sex, and Robots, Sex, and Death, or whatever it's called on Netflix, or What If on Disney, but now think of it as a bunch of video games and role-playing games and board games. And that's what they're doing with this Secret Lair. So one of the episodes is going to be based around Dungeons and Dragons, but they're also doing Pac-Man, Halo, a couple other video games, Mega Man. So yeah, video games, just generally here's some animation based upon things that you might recognize, like D&D. There's also Dungeons and Dragons stamps, which is fine. And there's these Dungeons and Dragons live plays, Dungeons and Dragons stage shows, Dungeons and Dragons walkthroughs, Dungeons and Dragons immersive experiences, which are going to rate from unbelievable to meh. I mean, it can't be worse than that Wonka immersive experience they did in London. You'd have to actually try to be worse than that thing. But I would compare everything I'm reading, everything I'm seeing, everything I'm hearing is I would compare the immersive experiences, a lot of people are saying, to a walkthrough at Halloween Horror Nights. And we're using Halloween Horror Nights specifically because we know one of them is going to be at Universal, and it's going to be set up by the same people who set up Halloween Horror Nights. So if you're familiar with the mazes at Halloween Horror Nights, that's the same level you're going to get out of Immersive, which, as we know, is not that great. We know that Halloween Horror Nights mazes today are not as good as the previous ones, which is weird because the technology is better, but they don't seem to care as much. There are plenty of home haunts that we've seen that are better than Halloween Horror Nights. Halloween Horror Nights has become the McDonald's of walk-through haunts and walk-through mazes. So if you are familiar with the mazes at Universal Halloween Horror Nights or Florida Halloween Horror Nights, that's what you can expect from the Immersive Dungeons & Dragons experience. It's not going to be scary, but it's going to have the same level of theming. It's going to have the same level of interaction. Each one's going to take about 30 to 60 minutes. There will probably be one mega prop animatronic in the center. I think it's going to be Xanther. So expect to see a really, really cool Beholder animatronic, but then go, yeah, but I've seen better. Because again, if you look at any of the videos of the haunts this year at Universal, you're like, yeah, but I've seen better. You've done better. These are all kind of meh. So yeah, but that's what they're doing. And that's what started this whole conversation from Above the Table and Dracoya and the Pickled Dragon, is that Wizards of the Coast, Hasbro, is doing these stage plays, is doing these interactives. They're taking D&D out of the basement and putting it out into the public to see if they'll do this. And it's not the first time they've done this. They've done immersive experiences before. I remember going through one at the San Diego Comic Book Convention when I was like 20. They had an immersive experience. They do immersive experiences for D&D in Japan all the time, despite the fact it's not the #1 selling game in Japan. Call of Cthulhu is. Suck it, who everybody said otherwise. So they've done this before. So this isn't something new. You know, the only tagline that they're adding to it is it's going to be as good as Halloween Horror Nights, but not scary. But the same theming and the same level of technology involved. To which, again, I would say, as a fan of haunts and older Halloween Horror Nights, that's not saying a lot, guys, because Halloween Horror Nights mazes lately suck. But it'll be passable. It'll be the Big Mac of interactive experiences. It'll be fine. If that's something you want to spend $50, $100 on to do a 60-minute interactive walk-through Dungeons & Dragons thing on the off chance that there's a couple really cool props, knowing full well that you have to walk through the gift store at the end of the experience, that's fine. And that's what they have planned. And that's something everybody's going to be doing in order to continue to embrace evolving audiences. And understanding that your audience is evolving and changing is fine. It's expected. It's good business. As long, to quote the doctor, as long as you don't forget who the audience was behind you, which is the main mistake that Wizards of the Coast keeps making about their Dungeons & Dragons. And it's the main mistake, to go even further, that Hasbro makes about any of their products. We want to embrace the future, but we don't want to acknowledge the past. Well, every other company understands that you have to evolve, you have to go forward, you have to embrace change, and that's okay. Again, to quote the doctor, as long as you do not forget everything that came before. And that is the core problem with Wizards of the Coast. That's why Dracoya and the Pickled Dragon are asking us, are they leaving us behind? Do they no longer care about us? That's why Above the Table is asking this. That's why I make these videos every week, because Wizards has forgotten the core value. But that's okay, because somehow, despite all this stupidity, they fail forward. Even when they lose money, they're still failing forward. Wizards is still making money. Dungeons & Dragons is still making money. The brand, despite how stupid it is somehow still working for them. They can't lose. You look at what they've done with Power Rangers and you go, that's utterly stupid. But people are still excited about Power Rangers. You look at what you've done with D&D and you go, that's stupid. But people still buy it because of name recognition. And as, you know, another famous person once said, a sucker's born every minute. So D&D is not dead. D&D, the brand, is going to be fine. It's not going to be what we want. It's not going to be what we like, but it's going to exist. And as long as it exists somehow, then old fucks like me who actually just want to play and people who do want to experiment with other games will still be fine. We'll be fine. There'll still be people playing D&D in the basement somewhere till the end of time in some form. That's true. We do need to give more attention to independent and stuff like that. But, you know, you can't compete with that $1 million advertising. But if you look at who's making the most money consistently, it's indie games. You know, who consistently the $1 million club on Kickstarter is not 5e or 5e related stuff. It's independent stuff. It's Shadowdark and other games. The audience is there. Wizards would have you believe otherwise. Sure, there's McDonald's everywhere. But if you have a choice between McDonald's, spending $13 for McDonald's and spending $13 for, you know, Whataburger or In-N-Out or Red Robin or just making your own, who are you going to spend the $13 on, right? Sure, 60% of us are going to spend it on Big Macs, but the remainder are going to go, I want to try this small little hole in the wall. Because if I'm going to spend $13 on a burger, I want it to taste like it's worth $13. The same with D&D. Wizards will be fine. Even when Wizards ceases to exist in 2030, as long as Wizards, Hasbro can post that D&D on something, as long as there's one person still on the planet going, hey, are you guys playing D&D? It'll be fine. It will never lose its place. It would have to take a monumental, apocalyptic wrath of God to remove Dungeons and Dragons, the brand, from pop culture. Like it or not, that's the truth. Oops. You hear what I just said? That's what's going to happen. That's just the way things go. That's good business. That's proof that they're stupid, but it still works. And that's okay because, ready? Because, you know what's coming. Because I want you to know I appreciate each and every one of you. Thank you for joining me. Happy holidays. Because that's so Wizard.
We're laughing aloud now, magic in the air. Wands swirl around us, cast away our care. Friends in the hallways, adventures we find. Spells and enchantments, trouble on our mind. That's so Wizard.